So you want me to give you an example of a potentially well-rounded person?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, you ready? Buckle up. It's a long list.
I want my kids to be well-rounded, but I also kind of struggle to understand what that really means. Yes, if you had an Encyclopedia Britannica, you were in the right place.
Yep.
I don't have any of those kinds of accomplishments, but would you consider me a well-rounded person?
You're a busy mom who can navigate the World Wide Web like a pro, but also remembers a time of mixtapes, Oregon trails, and phones that plugged into the wall. Then you probably need a place to relax, unwind, and get real about life. This, friend, is that place. Join Carrie and Mary Beth as they spill all the tea on faith, family, and motherhood. Together, they unpack the hard issues of life with a little humor and a whole lot of faith. This is the Spilling the Tea podcast with Carrie and Mary Beth. It's tea time, friends. Let's dive in.
Welcome, friends, to Tea Time. It's time to spill the tea on well-rounded children and how to train them up.
I'm excited to talk about this today.
It's a hot topic.
No pun intended. Well, that's not true. Puns totally intended. They're always intended.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is a hot topic. This is certainly one that I think about. I want my kids to be well-rounded, but I also kind of struggle to understand what that really means.
True.
What does it actually mean to have a well-rounded child?
Well, since you ask, I can give you the definition.
Do you have a definition?
I do. So, the Google says, it's an adjective. You describe someone as well-rounded when they express approval of them because of a personality which is fully developed in all aspects. That includes liberal arts, helps you become a well-educated, well-rounded person, someone who's interested in the world and interesting to others.
Oh, well.
So you want me to give you an example of a potentially well-rounded person?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, you ready? Buckle up. It's a long list.
Okay.
All right. So this is basically like a senior accomplishment for someone from their yearbook.
Oh, this is like out of like your yearbook?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't say it was mine. But
Well, I mean like, yeah.
2 years of concert band, 2 years of marching band, 1 year of JV soccer, the Wizard of Oz spring musical, 1 year of one-act play, 2 years of literary girls extemporaneous speaking, first in the region and sixth in the state, 1 year of literary girls dramatic interpretation alternate, 1 year prom committee, 4 years academic bowl, 2 years of JV and 2 years of varsity, 2 years of FBLA, 1 year as the secretary, 3 years of beta club, 1 year as the president, 1 year of Youth Alive, 1 year ads director for the yearbook, 1 year of newspaper staff, 1 year of feature editor, 1 year JGG, which the person was the president, 4 years of number one club, 3 years of who's who among American high school students, 1 year perfect attendance, most conscientious world history, most outstanding web design and multimedia communications, the Fletcher Gideon Award for 2004, graduation usher for 2004, senior homecoming court representative, and voted most talkative. Do you think the person is well-rounded?
I know who this person is.
And?
Most talkative. It ain't me. No, that's a large volume of activities and very diverse. Like you've got like speaking and leadership and the creative arts and like band. That's a long list.
It's quite a long list. Made for a very busy high school time.
So I'm curious, do you think, we can tell them it's you, right?
It was me.
Do you want to know what was next to my senior picture?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Not even a quote?
It's probably a quote. I have no idea what it is. I could go dig my yearbook out. It's in my memory bin. I've done quite a bit of purging of all of those
Senior
things.
year and kindergarten year are the only two that I kept. So.
See, and I kept my freshman year because we lived in Vermont until my freshman year of high school, and then we moved to Michigan when I was in 10th grade. So all the people, half the people that are in my freshman high school yearbook, I had gone to school with them since preschool. And so that, I really wanted that one because that captured everything.
Yeah, your life until that point.
Yeah, until that, which I thought was very important.
True.
Up until that point, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I got my senior yearbook because everybody gets a yearbook, right? Like that's your last thing, and
it lists all of your accomplishments.
Yeah.
To date.
So I'm curious. You use a lot of those band skills? You marching around in your yard? What'd you play?
Clarinet.
Okay, I played the flute.
Okay.
Yep.
Until my son started piano a couple of months ago, I had not used them since I stopped being in band.
Same.
So now, I mean, I use it as far as sometimes helping him with knowing notes and that kind of stuff, and I can still read a scale, but no.
So which of those accomplishments do you feel like has most served you now as an adult?
So the ironic thing is probably the extemporaneous speaking. Do you know what that means?
I don't.
Okay. So basically it's, you draw a topic out of a hat kind of thing.
Okay.
Like a hot topic, sort of like we're doing now, right?
Oh, yeah. Hot take. It was a hot take before hot takes were hot takes.
It was extemporaneous speaking. And so then you have like a 30-minute window, and since I went to school in the dark ages, if you had internet.
You had web design.
I did.
In that list.
But I knew how to, what is it called? Like coding web design.
I was halfway through college when they were making that list about you. So I don't think you were in the dark ages, girl.
Well, yeah, but we had to use magazines because we didn't have laptops with internet. And for heaven's sake, we did not have smartphones.
Did you have an Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yes. The whole set.
If you too had
you know.
Yes, if you had an Encyclopedia Britannica, you were in the right place.
Yep. So you would have magazines that you would have taken from school.
Yeah.
And you have to find something related to this current hot topic. And then you have to stand up and present in front of judges. And they want your speech to be in between 5 and 10 minutes.
Wow. That's a lot with only 30 minutes to prepare.
And you can have a note card.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's probably served me best just because of the role that I have now. I've, done a good bit of training. And I also am in management.
You have to think on your feet. And
right.
You have to be able to defend a position. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that being something.
So that's probably the best thing I have from that list of accomplishments.
Yeah.
Because I'm surely not marching anywhere.
Well, I would ask you then we should start a little neighborhood marching band. Do you still have your clarinet?
I don't. I pawned it.
Oh, I have my flute.
It was decluttered via the pawn shop.
I played the flute from 3rd grade until 10th grade.
Wow.
And then I quit.
Started early up north.
Yeah. And then I quit playing because I did not want to be in marching band. I was more of a concert band person. I was not putting a tracksuit on. And when it was cold and marching down Main Street with my flute, no.
That was so fun though.
Oh, I hated it. I hated it. With my little music sheet on my arm and I just hated it. I wanted to be in the concert band. I was first chair. So many years. I loved it. I actually thought I would get a music scholarship until I got into high school and I got to 10th grade and you had to join the marching band
to do concert
band, and I was like, well, there goes that music scholarship because I ain't doing that.
So you want to hear something really ironic?
Yeah.
I quit marching band for 2 reasons. Number 1, I got a job, and number 2, I can't memorize music. I can memorize a speech. But I can't
memorize the music. Oh. Well, so I have a question for you.
Okay.
I don't have any of those kinds of accomplishments, but would you consider me a well-rounded person?
I would.
Oh. Well, that says something, doesn't it? Because what does our world say about having a well-rounded child?
That you need to be a me.
Okay. I appreciate your boldness. No, I think it's true. Like me. Everybody be like me. Okay, we're going to cut that part out because I can't stop laughing about that.
So what does society say is where you're going?
So what does society say about what it actually means to raise a well-rounded child?
That you need this laundry list of accomplishments.
I do, and so much more. I mean, there's a whole list of stuff that I think are not on that list, but that I hear people talk about all of the time that their kids really need to be involved in, and from a very young age too, which personally I have a bit of an issue with. Like, I will say, I have an issue.
We differ on this one a
little. Like, I don't think it's as necessary. I don't think kids are learning quite as much as a whole. I think there are some, like, don't get me wrong, I think there are some individual kind of outliers to this, but I think as a whole, most kids are not taking away from the extra activities, all of the enrichment activities, what their parents are actually hoping that they will take away from those activities. But I also see families who devote so much time to those activities. It's all consuming. It takes away from all of their other time together as a family. They don't eat meals together. Somebody's always on the run. They're out of town every weekend. They miss church services. They aren't involved in any type of of your church extracurricular kinds of things, because they're devoting so much time to these other kinds of enrichment activities. And from an outsider perspective, I just have to ask, what are you gaining from all of those activities that are, assumed to be very well-rounding of your child?
Well, I have to say, for us, because my son has been involved in several things, we've tried the gamut of things. We have done stuff through the church. Our church has several sports leagues, including soccer, basketball, and baseball. We've only played soccer there, but we played soccer there 2 seasons. And so they have structured it in a way that it's faith-based. Every game session starts with a prayer and a devotion. And then at the end, they're talking about character words and character building.
Yeah, our son did a basketball league, and halftime in the middle of their practice or whatever, they would stop and do a little devotional. And it wasn't through our church, but it was through a local church. And I know there are a lot of programs out there. Upward Sports, typically is
Soccer Shot.
Yes, like very faith-based, and they're going to have that kind of character building component, which I really like. But outside of that, the competitiveness, and even now, our youngest son is in 3rd grade. He's sort of missed the mark if he wants to play any of these sports.
That's true.
Coming in,
He's behind the game because he hasn't already started.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. He's 9.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, my laundry list did not grow to this extent until I was middle school and high school age.
Yeah.
But again, that was 20-something years ago. I say that very quietly.
Yeah, well, it's even longer for me, so don't be too ashamed. But I think it starts earlier and earlier that we're pushing our kids into these activities in the hopes that it's going to make them this very well-rounded child. They're going to be cooperative. They're going to know how to operate on a team. They're going to be good leaders. They're going to be any manner of the things that we think kids are going to get out of this. And it's not just sports. I'm not trying to put sports down or things like that. There are a host of activities out there, especially, as we get closer to the summer months. I'd like to say that. Oh, we have a little visitor.
Hi, Gunny.
As we get closer to the summer months, all of the summer camps that are going to pop up, all of the activities, there's Lego clubs and enrichment. I think last year there was like computer coding and like writing video games. These are all things. What was the other one? I was recently talking with somebody about, robotics.
Oh, wow. I agree with you. I think there is definitely a societal push to put your kid in everything. And I'm guilty. We have tried lots of things. But like our very first initial thing we did, we tried karate. He was 3. And the reason we started it is because he was having trouble sitting still. Okay. Karate's very much about,
self-discipline.
Yes. Yep. Standing still or sitting still and listening to the things that the sensei or whatever is saying. And so for me, it was an attempt to teach him some of that self-discipline.
Yeah.
And we ended that not because he wasn't getting stuff from it. We ended it for completely different reasons. And then he is a busy boy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so he does so much better when he is busy and involved in things.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's not about trying to get this list on your yearbook page. It's literally about keeping him busy so that when he is at school and trying to learn, he's more focused on things because he's gotten some of his energy out and doing some of these extra activities.
Well, and I think that's something else that we sometimes forget just in general, whether it's through activities or other means. Our kids have a need to express that energy in lots of different ways. And we can hinder that when we are constantly like putting them in front of the TV or we're trying, they're at school all day long and they're sitting at their desk and they're having to focus on all of these things. If they don't have some outlet after school, on the weekends, before school, like whenever you can, if they're not having an outlet for some of that energy, whether it's physical energy or creative energy, using their imagination.
Or distraction sometimes.
Well, if you have boys, if you know, you know. I'm constantly, we were talking about this last night in our home group, I'm constantly like, what was that? What was that?
Did they punch a hole in the wall?
Yeah, it's like, what was, I asked that question, like, what was that? What are you doing? At least 100 times a day. I'm pretty sure they'd like take the house apart brick by brick. Yeah. If they did not have some type of
sort of
outlet. And I think to our society, we look at that and think that it has to be this very structured, regimented kind of thing. And we don't always leave kids room for creativity and developing their critical thinking skills and their imaginations. And so we wind up with kids that we want to be really well-rounded. And they may be good at a lot of different things, but they haven't actually developed the skills that they need to be that kind of like, which the definition's great, but I don't know that definition's the end all be all of anything either. Like I don't want my kid.
So do you have a definition? If you were going to define well-rounded?
That's an interesting question. Because I think I feel like I have more of a definition of what I know I don't want it to be. I don't want my kids just to be interesting and fun to be around.
That's fair.
I want those things. They certainly have the interesting thing down.
But you also, I know for you and I we both want them to have a faith.
Yes.
We want them to be sort of well-behaved. I desire for mine to be really well-behaved, but...
Yes, I would like for them to have a healthy level of conditioning to social norms.
Yes.
But I also think that those are some of the kinds of things, not the behavior. I mean, I think we all want that. Like from day one, we want our kids to listen and do the things that we want them to do. And but I think when it comes to things like their faith, I wonder if people think that that's something that has to develop later in life.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like, is it not until you're in high school or you're in...
But it doesn't have to be. I mean, one of my good friends' little boy just got baptized like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And he's probably 6 months older than my son, so he's already 7.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got saved when I was 7 years old. Your faith... It depends on where you come from, though.
I agree.
Because everybody's story is different with faith.
And what you're exposing your children to. Mm-hmm. I know growing up, and my mom would probably not love this.
Don't listen.
I know. Turn it off, Mare. It's going to be okay. Just skip over this part. But I don't remember a single time that we actually sat down as a family at home and read the Bible together.
I could agree with that. Now, not with my grandparents, but with my actual parents, yes. But grandparents, I definitely spent time in the Word.
My aunt and uncle, every single meal would sit down and they would open up the Bible, like an actual copy of the Bible, which is mostly because phones didn't exist in those days that were not tethered to the wall. But they would open the Bible and they would systematically be reading through Scripture. And I remember being at my grandparents' house and them doing that and actually thinking it was kind of weird. Like, why were they doing that? We're not at church. Why would we be doing that?
I remember my grandparents always, like, when you would spend the night there, they spent at least 30 minutes down on their hands and knees praying before bed. And they would just pray and pray and pray. And, like, as a little kid, you're like, can we go to bed?
Yeah.
Are we done yet?
That's funny.
But, like, in hindsight, that was amazing. That was an amazing testimony.
Yeah.
That they spent that much time every single day on their hands and knees in prayer.
Well, and I think when I think about the well-rounded child, especially, having kids with special needs that may not be involved in all of the same kinds of things or even have the same kinds of opportunities to be involved in those things, they still need those elements of being on a team and having good leadership and understanding and developing their imaginations, developing their critical thinking skills, knowing how to engage with people they don't know, knowing how to engage with people they do know. All of those aspects, they need all of those things. But I think for me and my husband, the way that we have kind of approached this idea of being a well-rounded child is through discipleship. I think I think any of the things that you want to develop in your child, you can do through the lens of discipleship. We all have a part. Even we're about to celebrate a Passover Seder. Our church has been doing this the last few years. And all of our kids will be involved. They will all have a part in this. They all have things, whether they're reading or not reading, whether they're young or older, they all have a part in that.
And I know your boys really like to help you, like, with the cooking part.
Yes, like they love it. And just the liturgy of it, they have understood more about church membership and communion and Easter and why we celebrate these things just through the practice of this once a year meal that we do. And I think there are so many people who would hear about that and they'd hear the announcement in church and they'd be like, oh, that's a bummer. That Friday night, that's your championship game. Right. Or, oh, we can't do that Saturday afternoon. Remember, you have piano or you have this or you have that. And while all of those things are very good, I think what helps to make a well-rounded child is knowing when to prioritize things.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's one of the best things about the sports and all that we've partaken in is minus piano, but I made the choice for the day that it's on. The leagues we have played in, because they've been either church-based or we live in the South.
Yeah.
People take church pretty serious, as you should.
Yeah, you can't live in the Bible Belt and not have...
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't generally do practices or games on Wednesdays or Sundays.
Yeah.
And so that's always been super helpful for us. We fill those days with other things, of course, like going to church.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we chose for piano to be on Wednesday because that, again, is a day that he doesn't have other things that happen.
Well, and that's not to, you are putting a focus there. And even if you're not, he's also not of the age where he would have like youth group or a lot of those things on a Wednesday night will start kind of later.
Yeah, there are children's activities, but we finish piano in a timely manner to be able to go to those if that's what we chose to do that night.
So we had this couple come into one of our Sunday school classes and we were talking about parenting and, actually I think we were talking about stewardship and they were coming in to talk about parenting, which if your church is not talking about your time, your parenting, all of those things when they're talking about stewardship, it ain't just about the money.
No, but don't be afraid to talk about the money.
I know, you should be talking about those things, but I digress. So they came in and they were talking about parenting and they were sharing that their son played travel ball, which
is huge here.
Oh my gosh. I don't know about in other parts of the country, but in the South, travel ball is like...
Ball is life.
Yes, it is life. And they shared that they had made a commitment with their son that he could play travel ball. He was very good. And he wanted to play. They wanted him on the team. Like, this was an important thing for him. But they were very clear that they would not participate in any games until after they had attended church services. And it didn't matter where they were. If they were in Georgia, they were in Tennessee or North Carolina, wherever they were, they found a church and they would go to the church service. And it didn't matter if the tournament started at 9:30 and they were going to be in church. He was not at that ball field until after they had attended church services.
I think that's amazing.
And I just appreciated that level of commitment. One, because we can also get very hung up in like wanting to attend our church, and we're not going to deviate from that. We can be so afraid of going to even another denomination that we can be afraid that we may be exposed to something that we just won't be able to, we don't want our kids to hear something that's contrary to our beliefs, which do a little bit of research ahead of time.
Use your discernment.
Yeah, and know which churches maybe that are not in your denomination but are very similar that you can go and participate in. But just that commitment of saying, like, church comes first. And, she shared a lot that a lot of the times there were some tears, there were some pushback from coaches that would say, like, that's unacceptable. If we have a game, he has to be here. And they would just stand firm in their faith and say, well, then he won't be on this team.
Because their faith was more important than the ball game. And let's be honest, how many of those kids that play travel ball weekend after weekend after weekend are going to the major leagues?
Well,
not a lot.
That's the other side of that.
Let's just go back to my list for a second. Out of all of these, one thing got me a scholarship.
Oh.
And it was like
Was it the speaking?
It wasn't.
Oh.
It was my grades. That was what the Gideon whatever. So.
Good job.
But I'm saying I did a lot.
Yeah.
And not that, how do I say this without sounding terrible? Don't come after me. I did a lot.
I'll cut it out if it's bad.
I did a lot. But was it worth it for me as an adult?
Well, I think in some ways it probably was. I think there are some things that those experiences help to form and shape in you that you take today that you maybe at first glance can't trace back to that. But I also know that in times in the past when I have been a manager and like been in charge of hiring people, when I look at resumes, I didn't automatically see the extracurricular things and was like, oh, this is going to be a good one.
That's true.
Sometimes it was the ones that didn't have any of that extra affiliation that ended up being some of my best employees. And it was really because of it came down to character. Yeah. And it can be developed through both of those things. True. But I think at the end of the day,
balance.
Yes, at the end of the day, it really comes down to the character that you're developing in your kids. And I think that's what really makes, you asked me what would be my definition. And I think that's what, I think a well-rounded child is one of character and integrity, who seeks the Lord and who still makes mistakes. I think we think about this well-rounded child as being like, this is the perfect kid. This is going to be the one who behaves. This is going to be the one who helps his friends. He's going to be the one, or she's going to be the one that ends up on TikTok that sat at lunch with the lonely kid, right?
TikTok.
I'm a TikToker. Very quiet these days. Anyway, side note. But I think our society will even look to those kinds of things that like, oh, this is the standard. This must be the standard for a well-rounded child. And I think at the end of the day, there's a lot more to it than that, but it can also be very simple.
I agree. I think too, like one of the big things that plays in, I talked about my grandparents earlier. So they, they lived through the Great Depression. And then of course my mom is boomer. And so I think like some of that, like work harder and harder, we might have twisted the definition of working harder.
Yeah.
It's not so much that we have to do all the things, but find something you're good at to help with that well-rounded. Like, for me, if it's my son that he plays the piano and he goes off to be some massive concert pianist, great. But if he doesn't, like you said, it's all about really, for me as his mom, his character and what his faith life is going to look like one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so do you think you're growing well-rounded children?
Yeah, I think I am. I mean, I don't want to like pat myself on the back. I certainly am. I often feel like I'm failing as a parent, that I'm not, I'm not living up to my own expectations. I think we all have those.
Episode.
There you go. Throw back to episode 1. But no, I constantly feel like I'm not doing enough. But I also see the fruit coming through in them. And even when I'm frustrated, people will stop and say something to me like, oh, your son said this, or your son did this. Or, in fact, somebody just told me a few months ago, was sharing with me, she's like, I'm so glad that your son is in my son's Sunday school class. He just brings him out of his shell. He doesn't give him an opportunity to not be out of his shell, because he's just like, come on, friend. And then he just pulls him alongside him. And I was like, that's, I get frustrated sometimes with how like energetic and like wants to be involved in everything. But I do take for granted those times when somebody else is like, it's his like extrovertedness that's helping to bring my child into fellowship with other believers, even on a small scale like that. So I definitely think there is truth in the proverb, to train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. I think you are laying the foundation for your kids now through discipleship and through all of these other activities. Even being involved in those activities, you can still shine a light into a dark place through your kids. But I also think we have to keep it in balance with like what Jesus tells us in the Sermon on the Mount. Like all these commandments, the greatest are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, might, soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that's really, I'm going to change my definition again. I think that's the definition. I think it's those two things: love God, love each other.
There you go. Hey, I think that's the epitome of a well-rounded person.
I think so too. We figured it out.
We need a new Google definition.
We're going to write a new Google definition. Look in the description box. Look in the description box below for that. Spilling the tea, writing definitions.
There you go.
Well, we want to hear in the comments below, if you're watching this on the video version, what do you think makes for a well-rounded child? Thanks so much for stopping by today and chatting with us as we spill the tea on everything well-rounded children.
Until next time.
Thanks for joining us for the Spilling the Tea podcast with Carrie and Mary Beth. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider sharing it with a friend? We'd love to keep the conversation going, so consider leaving a comment or a review. We'll see you again next week for Tea Time.